I was not able to give comments like that. So very much, of your meeting. So actually, interestingly, after the 2014 election, a couple of years after the 2014 election, the guy who was very involved in these self-professedly kind of neoliberal think tank scene in Delhi, he was saying that, look, I've been getting together with a number of business people, and we're actually very unhappy with the current dispensation because they're not actually being pro-business. Yeah. So there is I think, again, I don't have an answer to this. I'm posing a question, which is, there are people for whom, there are constituencies for whom I believe, I don't think they're huge, but I think they exist, who are not necessarily for, doesn't necessarily mean that it is, both you accepting to and you. Now, but having said that, neoliberals in general are always a small constituency, pure pakka neoliberals, right? So what that means is, in order to get a coalition, you need to organize with social and religious conservatives. There is always a book by Melinda Cooper, Family Values, between neoliberalism and the new social conservative. It's about how Ronald Reagan and the very conservative American society, religiously conservative Christian society, gets together with free market radicals, and it becomes on the point of the state is bad, blah blah blah. Charity is what should be provided, by religious charities, etc., as welfare, and that kind of aligns with the some of the free market, even in that they are both opposed to the state provision of certain kinds of services. So, but then, if the true neoliberal vision is going to hold, right, then those social and religious conservative constituencies, right, will be eroded over time, and then that contradiction will kind of is something that plays out. Right? Now, ultimately, my sense is that I have not thus far seen a way in which it is the neoliberals who have the victory over the social and religious conservatives. Right, it is often they are the ones who, you may say that people then come to power, and then you get an old body capitalist formulation, which the neoliberals will say is kind of anathema to their way of operating, because they want perfect competition from in a marketplace. So, but again, that's a sort of question mark. And of course, in the Indian context, all of this is even more complicated question mark, as I responded to Professor Dasgupta, because the basis of capital accumulation is often caste based. So, absent some kind of education revolution or whatever, or social revolution, what kind of possibility do you have? The second question with respect to Bengal, as a fertile ground for people. So I actually think I have been working on a hypothesis. I've written a piece on the Travancore famine of 1943, and the rise of communism in Kerala. And so one possibility is that, Bengal is different because it's also, you have the Bengal is split, and so you also have the economy, you have the factories in one side and you have the raw materials on the other, right? And so, there is that dynamic taking place, and that's not so much what you have in the princely states and in Malabar, in Kerala, because they join and you have IKEA or United Kerala. But in both those states, right, and again, this is a sort of crude, I'm sure I'm wrong, right? The great Dipesh Chakrabarti, or not so great depending on who you are, says that, in the social sciences we're all wrong. The question is, did you make an interesting mistake? But anyway, here's the question. The question is, so you have famine or something famine-like in both places. The communists have got the People's War line, right? Whereas your Congress Party people pursuing Quit India, etc. So they are actually able to help with famine relief. Does this help them then build up some kind of capital politically, right? And this is a time of immense devastation, and so and food then becomes at least in the Kerala example that I have studied, food becomes a very central part, and food security becomes a very central part of communist politics, right? And obviously we know about the Kerala model and all that. So that is not quite necessarily a response to you, but this is the kind of question of the political mobilization that is taking place oppositionally to sort of main party in town is different. Now, the modular form, so I mentioned Deepesh Chakraborty, I suppose I'll mention Partha Chatterjee also. Okay, so modular form, and is this a derivative discourse and all of that. An interesting point is that in the Indian edition of that book, right, we're talking of some Indian edition of that book, it was pointed as derivative discourse question mark. And the University of Minnesota Press or whichever Americans butchered it, they took out the question mark. Right, but the point is that it was not a derivative discord, right? There was a moment of departure, a moment of maneuver, and a moment of arrival, and that constituted the creativity, right? So, I would say that, yeah. But in any case, even if you think of those figures that Partha is looking at, those are more sophisticated, rigorous thinkers than the ones that I am looking at, even though they read a lot of texts. And so it's not really a value judgment on whether or not this is a sophisticated neoliberalism. Because quite frankly, in one of the essays in the Lotwala Institute pursues, they say, look, we are not neoliberalism. To us, neoliberalism is no different from laissez-faire. We are interested in an agricultural society, primarily. Right? We do not agree with the neoliberals they write in the reprint of Hayek's 1952 essay, The Rebirth of Liberalism, in the what's it called? In the Free Economic Review, it is reprinted from the Freeman, which is published in New York. There's an epigraph or whatever, what's it called, a note to the reader saying that while we do not agree with this, we believe it's useful for you guys to kind of think about, or you readers to think about, right? So I think that's important. The other point is that it's not even about modular form in the sense that if we think about the material history of this, they're only getting some of von Mises, they're only getting some of Hayek, right? They're not getting the part where von Mises says, as I mentioned in the book, that how can we believe these Indians to reason when they worship the cow? So, I think that the question of whether or not they are neoliberals is not, I'm interested in the history of not neoliberals or not quite neoliberals who are nevertheless the ones who are in contact with your mainframe neoliberals. And I think the history of that which something is not is interesting as part of what it is as well, right? And that is to contest the characterization that as an intellectual phenomenon, this germinates in the Atlantic and then just kind of catches like wildfire everywhere, right? And one of the things that I think is important to do is that not to draw a line from Swatantra Party to 1991. Absolutely not, right? That I think, and I had a launch earlier this week, and one of the discussants, I think, very eloquently summarized, that is also a story of, and I've written a little bit about this in this essay called Is India and its Journey. Neoliberalism is a story very much more of international institutions and the kind of global economic order, right? From the 60s, Shastri years to the devaluation, and then similarly, and so on and so forth, right? And work Professor Dasgupta and others that's also in progress. So I think that's what I would say on that. And I think, you're absolutely right. I think that the idiom of freedom, right, and the ways in which that is used can be appropriated in so many different ways as we have seen. And I would also add to that, right, is the figure of Gandhi and what he stands for. Because in the first meeting of Swatantra Party in these film studios in New York, and I wish I had been there, the Reuters video is available so you can actually see. There is something about Gandhi and that Gandhi writes about, I look upon the state as the greatest encroachment to human freedom and all of that, right? So that is being used, Gandhi, by the man whose daughter has married Gandhi's son Rajgopalachari is being using this to support his kind of free market party or whatever you want to call it. So I think that's an interesting point, and we have to be sensitive to that.